So I'm Devine, and this is Jesse Stevens. Can everyone hear us okay? Is it okay up a bit? Yep, okay. Obviously not the mic. So basically we started a couple of years ago, and we're interested in getting people to collaborate from different disciplines and create work based on art and technology. Yeah, we've got a space down in Collingwood, which we've had for about a year now, and we're bringing people in and running lots and lots of different sprints. There's a lot of reasons why we're doing it. One of them is there's a lot of technologies coming out that are not really used the way they could be used. So this is the first example to kick things off. Is from Disney Research. It's an amazing piece of technology which uses capacitance touch sensing, which basically means it can turn anything into an interface because of the way electricity behaves, essentially.
And this capacitive touch sensing is this type of touch that you use on your iPhones or any multi-touch screen. And so we see it in a lot of commercial contexts now, but we're also seeing it start to be used in creative circles for things like this, although this is an example of a very uncreative way.
We see a lot of creativity is necessary to create great technologies, but we also see that there's a lot of creativity necessary to implement and find the right applications for those technologies. And this is from Disney.
Touche's ability to sense interaction in liquids could be used, for example, to monitor and train kids to use the right implements for eating breakfast.
Amazing. She looks a lot older than it actually as well. So it's funny that we're here this morning talking about art and technology, because almost 50 years ago in New York there was a series of 9 evenings based around getting scientists from the Bell telephone laboratories to collaborate with artists and create work. And that sort of carried on into the years afterwards, and here we are now, and the topic's still super relevant. How are technologies just as relevant as it was then, if not way more? I feel like we're in an experiential era where we're making experiences for each other with technology. We're creating loads and loads and loads of different experiences, and technology's not going to stop doing that. It's just going to become more and more ridiculous.
Yeah, and we're approaching 50 years from that time, and we're still seeing these questions coming up of arts and technology. Is technology art really art? And these strange questions about whether or not it's relevant that these crossovers happen, and calling a crossover something new, which is quite weird, almost approaching 50 years on.
Yeah. And a lot of what's changed since the original sessions in New York is the web. The web is still underestimated how much impact that has had on society and all the experiences that we have. If you don't have the net on your phone or on your computer, it's just not a very good experience. So, the web it's totally underrated.
You've got some interesting statistics in terms of the growth of the amount of data growing on the web, haven't you?
Yeah.
60
gigabytes a second.
60 gigabytes a second it's growing. And we see that as a massive, we see it as a resource for utilising as a kind of reference point. We were talking about the other day the death of the podcast, and simply just in the last few years, the podcasts are dying all over the web simply because of our shift from being not connected while in transit to being connected on our mobile devices. And suddenly we're realising that it's ubiquitous. It's around us all the time. If you have an iPad, you generally have a 3G card stuck in the side of it, so you're connected everywhere you go. And so our perspective is changing from being a personal experience, even whilst on public transport, to looking at reference constantly when you have a question.
Yeah. The ability to with Google Maps and all these sorts of things and communication across any sort of time zone. Time doesn't really exist around the world. I mean, obviously you can text people and they're asleep, but the ability to see, there's apps on your phone that you can see, can show you where all the satellites around the planet are at this very moment in time on your phone. You can see that data in real time, and it's ridiculous. You know, Dick Tracy's video phone watches it's nothing now. It's his satellites. So a lot of this, we kind of wanted to set this up as a kind of, we live in a ridiculous age and the future's here and all that sort of stuff, and you know, maybe not everyone has it, but it's here. And so there's essentially, what we see our practice is a curiosity but led practice. So, and that's probably similar to what science, the practice is about, but it's, as an artist or a designer or as whatever we are, the curiosity leads us to learn more about what context we're in, what technologies are around, and how we can create with those things. Curiosity is huge.
Yeah, so it's important that people collaborate, and we've seen this through our sprints. Nobody knows everything. Someone who works in a very particular field is always able to find something new when working with someone from a very different field. We've seen fashion designers, we've seen programmers, we've seen people who are metalworkers all working together and finding out some pretty great intersections between them. There really is no such thing as DIY as well, and this is sort of Tim's big thing.
I don't know. I get the impression that it's sort of it's a symptom of kind of IKEA and all this stuff. You know, nothing is do it yourself. You know, there's so much stuff happening in the lead up to that. It's a collaboration. It's not do it yourself. If you're just telling people to do it, it's do it yourself, so that they get the impression that they've done it themselves when they haven't done it themselves. It's just the end of the process.
And also just, you know, talking about in terms of technology, everyone is standing on someone else's shoulders, and we see it even more so in open design and open technology. Open source sort of, I guess, permeates all layers, even if it's not a completely open source project. The technology itself and the idea is being shared as something to stand on the shoulders of. And so we see that as the thing that's destroyed in a good way, DIY. We use building blocks every day. We're not going right to assembly code and building a computer out of transistors. We're picking up a processor and utilising it in a very fast prototyping fashion.
Absolutely. Which is a good segue to rapid prototyping technology. So we use a lot of, as in our practice as artists, designers, technologists, whatever we are, we use a lot of different types of software, hardware, rapid prototyping technologies. So you can see here a few things, but so basically here's some software examples, different rapid prototyping software examples, 3D printer, and some kind of wearable microchips and hardware microcontrollers.
So you can see on the left there, that's Max. It's Max? Yep. And there's also pure data. It's a mode of programming through sketches and drawings. The 3D printer there is an open design project by Maker Labs in the US. It's a product that you can buy as well as contribute to as an open project, which suddenly puts 3D printing in plastics in a home garage kind of context. Further on, we then see that's processing, isn't it? Yeah. processing and the next one over, Arduino, share the same roots. Methods of programming in the same fashion, but processing is aimed at graphics and computer-driven artworks, whereas Arduino is based at the piece of hardware right next to it there, second from the right, which is a microcontroller which allows you to do physical computing very rapidly and very easily with quite an active community. And then we've seen Arduino morph with the community, which is another project over. That's a lily-pad Arduino, same hardware, you can see the same chip in the center of those boards, but that one is specifically aimed at physical computing in fashion. And again, open source, open design.
Yeah. So one of the benefits, or one of the main benefits we see of all this technology is that we can make and experience things really quickly. And these are our sketchbook, basically. We were able to create stuff and really try them out before we commit to this kind of fully fledged thing. And the more, it's becoming way more physical. So not only is there a 3D printer, but you can build your own CNC routers and things like that. So you can really start to make stuff that gets closer to a more industrial result. And that,
I guess in this context, the way that we utilise it, it allows us to get to an endpoint first and then go back over and work over the final details of the project. So we move there quite quickly, which is why we run what we call a sprint. Now, a sprint is a very intensive session of collaborators that first submit an idea online or via email or via discussion. They help realise the idea as a group. And this is where the collaboration comes in, because people with all different skill sets then begin to collaborate and then build to that idea and exhibit the collaboration at the end. And all of this happens within a week. This is 1 week from the idea to final product. And although the final exhibition may have wobbly bits, it may be kind of falling to pieces, it's still something that functions as an object or an idea, which then invites further work.
But one of the main things that differentiates a sprint from a workshop is that it's more directed and based around a topic. So we've had a few sprints, and one of them was relationships of technology to the body. So the iPhone, how that has become almost tethered to us in all the places that we are. And there's a few examples here of a few of the outcomes of the sprint. That wristband over there had a Peltier chip underneath it, which is a chip that heats up and cools down depending on which side it is. And so when a solar flare went off, you'd feel a really cool, literally cold patch on your wrist. So we were connecting people's bodies to astronomical events, and it was just a beautiful feeling. Like this cool rush just came over your hand.
Okay, we should go through the project too in terms of what's on screen here. There's up here on the top left, that's a kind of meter, and it's part of a wristband which meters different aspects of your physical existence. So things like temperature, exposure to light, moisture in the air, conductivity of your skin, but maps these to unlabeled meters, which you then get to make up your own meaning to. And you may not be totally aware of what's causing these meters to go up or down, but you may, through experience, be able to then figure out what that is. Maybe exposure to light is working too much in a dark room, or conductivity of skin is being outdoors too much and sweating too much. And then at the bottom left here, it's a piece of wearable clothing, which through discussion shows your inner feelings while you type on a discrete keyboard, what you're actually feeling about that conversation.
It's really good fun to actually see.
It's actually really good, yeah. Once you get the hang of typing and talking at the same time, it's pretty good. And down in the centre there, it's a small amulet that you wear, which springs to life
when the aurora borealis, the magnetosphere, when there's activity in the magnetosphere, which is solar radiation hitting the magnetosphere. This magnetic fluid, ferrofluid, I guess some of you may have seen ferrofluid, but ferro is iron, so it's iron in a kind of a motor oil congealed liquid, and when you put a charge on it, it forms these magnetic shapes and patterns, so you can see the magnetic field there. So that was also a part of the series of kind of connecting the body with wearable jewellery or objects to astronomical events. And all this stuff happens through the net as well. Let's not forget the wonderful wild web. So the next one, what we're interested in is having these sprints and then getting a quick outcome, which is a good result, and then taking it to another sprint we call the fabrication sprint, where we select one of the outcomes. That is, so for example, if we take the bracelet, and then we get people on board to learn how to create a replicable product or outcome so other people can experience the work. And then we put it online on websites like Pinocchio and things like that, so that the work doesn't just exist for someone, or the experience of the work is no longer a 10-second experience at the end of the sprint. It's something that you experience over longer periods of time, which is what these works should be done. It should be how they should be experienced. It's not, it's 10 seconds a day for a year, not 10 seconds for one day. You should live with these things and really see what the experiences are, and then bring that information back and then learn from those experiences.
And the method in which we'll put these online is a method in which it'll be open sourced in a way. It'll be an open design project so that other collaborators from overseas or wherever they might be are able to also contribute back to the project and have it continue on in life of its own afterwards. The Pinocchio and the creators plus the material suppliers then equals a kit.
Yeah.
A kit that you can order and assemble yourself, a lot like you'd order a piece of flat pack furniture or something like a purchase from eBay, except that you're able to then buy this work, which you can assemble and live with and possibly contribute back to its creation.
Yeah. So for those who don't know Pinocchio is basically a website where you can go and take all your designs, all your 3D printer designs or CNC designs, routing designs, and whatever that object form package will be, and get it manufactured on a micro scale. So you don't have to have a massive run. You don't have to print. You don't have 10,000 objects made out of plastic. You can get 2 or 3. That's on demand essentially, and that can be printed in porcelain. It can be printed in all different types of materials, which we can't do as a single lab. We can do it in plastic and get the prototype done, and that's what we'd use in the fabrication sprint. And then we can also get all the electronics from the supplier through Pinocchio, so that when someone orders the kit, they'll get all the electronics and all the objects to put it all together and have the experience that we want them to have. So it leads to... Okay. So many people are probably aware of crowdfunding. Australia is possible, and then there's Kickstarter. So this could lead to another level beyond the fabrication sprint. As media artists and designers, it's really hard to sell the work. A lot of the time, you make something, it's an installation, and someone can experience it in a gallery, but that's it. That's the end of it. And it's rarely will you sell the work that you make. So this is all this process is us trying to teach people how they might be able to get their work more distributed and make some money out of what they do, because there are a lot of people making a lot of great things, and I think that a lot of people should experience these things, and these ideas shouldn't just live in the galleries that they exhibit in, or the context they're created through the possibility of creating replicable art and devices. So
this is, I guess, where we lean into device art. You probably noticed on the front of the table here, we've given the table a kind of personality. This is an example of device art, which is it comes from a Japanese philosophy. It's a kind of an idea of trying to integrate art into everyday objects around you and trying to integrate it into your life around you. So, device art.
Yeah. So it's inherently Japanese. Japanese didn't have a word for art for a very long time, and they see art as intrinsically part of objects. So there's the paintings around a teacup or things like that, and as technology came in, technology became an intrinsically part of everyday life. So device art, instead of making 5 pieces of sculpture or whatever and selling that off, they make 10,000 of them, and then they can distribute it. And it's really about creating art for the masses as well. It's I know Grey World, and there are other ways of doing it, but device art is one way of sort of pushing art beyond a gallery context, and I think that sort of is good for media artists and gets the message out. Critical design is another context which has come out of sort of technology, and I think this is why I've had so many discussions with people about what they do as art or not as art, and I just find it somehow an irrelevant kind of label for a lot of the things that we do. Like art is relevant to society, but whether we label what we do as art or not is irrelevant somehow. One of the things that I like is to sort of work in. One of the areas that I really enjoy working in is critical design, because critical design takes the processes of art and the context of everyday design, which is, can be a remote control, it can be an iPhone, it can be anything, and then puts it in a context where people can't easily dismiss it as art, and they have to see it as design. So the context isn't a gallery. The context is kind of it can be a totally hypothetical thing as well, or it can be a strange object. So an example of critical design. Let's say in the future we're all born, and we're born with a pig, and the pig has our DNA, and so as we grow, we can harvest from little piggy. As we need, so if we need blood or whatever. But we're all living in a small apartment in London on the 12th floor, and we're sitting there and we're going, oh, this is easy, it's great, I don't have to worry anymore, I'm like one step closer to immortality. But so I'm going to smoke my ass off, I'm going to smoke cigarettes. And then you go, well, shit, little piggy's living with me, so little piggy's going to get passive smoking, and so that just ruins the whole plan. So an example of critical design is an object which is essentially like a megaphone that you can smoke into. So you smoke, you blow the smoke into the object. So it's a big story, it's a big tale, but it's an example of a designed object based on a hypothetical, not implausible situation that may arise in the future. And it's not plausible. And I think that's it's telling people these sorts of stories. They're kind of like little Artie does of designing science fiction indulgences, which is probably why I really like it. But that object is critical design, and people can't. I don't know if you agree, but I see that as an object which can't be dismissed as art. Can't easily be dismissed as art. It could be, if you're a little bit, no, I can't understand, but it could be. But it definitely sits in between design and art, and it probably has relevance to art, as much relevance as an art object does to culture and society and all that sort of stuff. And this little thing down here, I don't know if you can read it, but it's a great list of kind of the differences between kind of design reinforces the status quo, and what critical design balance or counterbalances or how it juxtaposes critical design. So it's instead of problem solving, it's problem finding, or instead of design as a process, it's design as a medium. Instead of providing answers, it asks questions. Instead of science fiction, it's social fiction. Instead of ergonomics, it's rhetoric. So this cone, it's not just about how you hold it, but it's what it's representing in its form. Yes, I really, really enjoy critical design as a context to work in as technologists and creatives.
Private spaces. So I guess this is about some of this technology and some of this art making a public space private and private space public. So some of the bits and pieces that we might design in these sprints, or something we might design as part of critical design, we're starting to now link up across areas. I don't know much about this dot com, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So, technology exists now every day, it's everywhere. Everyone in this room has a mobile phone. Hands up who doesn't have a mobile phone. Exactly. You know, everyone has something. Everyone's wearing something, everyone's carrying something. Everyone's engaging with technology, everyone's connected to the world. iPhones, iPods, we listen to music on public transport, we have a private personal experience in a public space. We're super interested as a group at the lab in creating experiences in public spaces and getting out of the gallery. We really see there's relevance to galleries, that's fine, but we really see the potential to reach a more kind of default audience somehow, like no, not default, but just an unaware audience. And that's probably where critical design also works as well. But that's public space and private space are great spaces for us to send things in and get people to use them. There's sex toys being made for the iPhone, and they're being made with really good plastics and things like that. And someone's gone, you know, sex toys are made with rubbish materials. You undo the plastic and it stinks. It smells like terrible rubber. And so they've gone, oh, well, I've got a device and I'm going to make my vibrator be triggered by the music that I'm playing. So, you know, that's a very private experience, I imagine. I didn't intend to talk about this today. But we're also working with agencies and architects and different people to create different ways of experiencing spaces that we walk through. So we're working with hotels to create interactions between hotel rooms and things like that. We're really trying to look beyond just a lot of people come to us and go, we want you to do something with a projection, we want you to do some projection mapping or something like that. But they don't know what the experience is. They just know that they've seen it somewhere and they just want to do it. And I think that's a cheap way out, and that's them coming with the creative or without the creative, you know, just a bucket for creative, which is probably not where it comes from. And we're really enjoying working with people who are coming to us and going, we want you to do what you do because you understand, you put energy into making stuff based on the experience rather than the technology that you're using. Because technology is super overwhelming, you'll engage with it, but the longevity of those experiences and the uniqueness of those experiences is not necessarily just projectors.
Well, also the thing is, starting with the endpoint is quite a strange thing too.
Yeah.
Starting with a complete finished endpoint to then fill with content is really, I guess that's kind of pretty much in the design arena without being any kind of critical intent, without having the information and context to then utilise it properly. Arriving at a point and saying, yes, it would be nice if it utilised this area, but then heading towards that with an idea of what's interesting about this space, what's interesting about, say, for example, a hotel area, what's interesting about a hotel room being suddenly able to interact with other hotel rooms.
Absolutely. And that is the end of the presentation, as it is on my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? This is where the discussion part comes in. I don't really know. I had a brief look at who was attending and the backgrounds, but I don't really know. Yeah. exactly where to start. Yep.
What's your philosophy with failure?
There is no failure. It's,
Why don't I ask you when we're trying to get people not to be scared of failure? Because it holds you back at the start. I mean, a lot of your stuff's quite experimental.
Yeah, well, speaking from personal point of view, I think failure is healthy. I think it's great. Failure, I think we're probably suffering from a 90% failure rate with most of the things we build. But that's where you have 500 half-built projects that fail, but you're able to pull from each of those to then continue cobbling them together into a larger object. It's often through failure we find that that failure is because it was missing something from something else. Failure is great.
Yeah. I think you learn after a while when to go, oh, this has failed. Like, it's important not to just go,
Releasing.
I'm doing this and I've done it and it's great because I did it. You need to be able to step back and go, well, it's just rubbish. That's not good at all. I'm not enjoying this experience. It's terrible for these reasons. And then you'll learn more out of that experience.
And usually failure means that that's become an object which is utilisable in a larger context. So it becomes a single tool. It failed as an object or a solution on its own, but then it's able to become part of a larger thing in future as a tool on its own. And in that way, failure, I guess, rather than being boring and just saying, yes, we learn from it, it's something that's an object to utilise in future again. To never treat it as something to never come back to is pretty unhealthy.
How much of what you do is commissioned and how much is just speculative?
I'd say probably 80% of it is speculative. Yeah, it's continually creating.
And then do you then use that to advertise your wares or long-term expression?
In a way, yeah. In a way to something that you've created and worked on just because you were interested in it. It'll always come back. There'll be a project or a possible solution at some point in future. You'll be able to apply part of that project to it. Again, I guess similar to the failure thing, everything you build will eventually have a purpose. So as long as you continue building, that's the main thing. Building only with purpose, I think, can be quite a bad thing to do. Building because you can and because you're interested is quite good.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. But the commission stuff, it's nice to be able to bring whenever we propose or pitch for a commission, we'll pitch based on the idea that not that it might not work, but that it will grow as we kind of work through the process of creating these experiences. Because it goes back to the rapid prototyping side where you want to experience something before you say yes, that works. Because all this stuff is new. A lot of these experiences are new. Like having your arm connected to a solar flare. Is that experience a good experience or a bad experience? I don't know. It needs to be experienced to be known.
And it's also an important thing to see that it has some kind of future, to be able to kind of get that skill eventually of being able to see, okay, that's not possible, we can't build a rocket ship that's able to reach the moon in 1 week, but we can potentially build a high altitude balloon with a recording device on board or something like that, being able to see what's potentially possible or partially possible without being pure speculation in terms of unless it's a 100-metre high walking robot, I'm not interested. It's kind of difficult sometimes, I guess, to rein in some of the ideas and make sure that they're actually possible as part of a sprint. And I guess that's where we see our role running the sprints is to try and guide it a little so it still has an outcome of some sort.
But the amount that when there's a little bit of risk in the projects, that's what makes them exciting. That's where the curiosity is sort of satiated. It's good, and there needs to be a bit of risk so there can be some failure. But sometimes it's super stressy, but it doesn't matter.
Mostly super stressy.
Yeah, mostly super stressy.
With the sprints,
is that something that you're doing just to produce replicable products, or is that something that you're doing for other things that you might not have the same kind of outcome as that? Or?
I think the sprints are about a directed workshop based on, like, you can create, there's an artist called Jim Campbell who created this graph a while ago, which was just all these inputs that can come into a computer, wind, audio, video, and then a computer in the middle, and then outputs, and they just scrolled, and the outputs were like wind, water, video, sound, and it was just a guy him saying, you know, yes, you can put any object, any medium, any sensor, anything into a computer, and yes, you can turn it into something else. But what does it mean? You know, why are you doing it? And that's curiosity is fine. You can do it in that way. But we're more curious into making things based around maybe a little bit more substance about how these technologies are actually affecting our lives and changing the way we behave and all that sort of stuff. So the sprints are a directed workshop. They're based on an idea, on a sort of context, so that people aren't just coming in and going, oh, there we go, now the sound is video. And it's worth experiencing, but we figure they're going to learn by going through this thing, and we might have an object at the end, or a product at the end, or an outcome at the end that we can replicate. It's not necessary. And the fabrication sprints are about learning that once you get to that stage, and a lot of people do get to that stage where they do have an outcome that is an object that is kind of a little bit shaky, it's a little billy cart sort of thing, rattles around, but you can take that to another stage through sites like Pinocchio and other manufacturing things. And yeah, I think that these processes are possible, and so why not take them out and let people experience them? You know, if you want, you don't have to exhibit it in a gallery.
Well, I think a prime example of that was one of the projects talked about, which is called the Gentleman's Listener, which was one of the sprints. It was a project which had a few contexts as well as the ability to become an object. Potentially, the basic concept was that you would wear a set of headphones with your phone clipped onto the top, and as you moved your head around with your headphones on, a remote head would move its head around in the same fashion, and you'd be listening to a remote environment. And we see that as a potential for lots of different outcomes. So it had the ability to become an exhibition of some sort where you potentially would just go and listen to something in the gallery. It had the potential to become a replicable kit which could be purchased and perhaps made into multiple sites around the world that people could tune into with their own sets. Or it could become someone's object which they go and run a project in a remote area as a one-off project of some sort. So yeah, I guess seeing it in multiple contexts is a good idea.
Mm.
What's the future of printable media in the context of all the new technologies? Is there any future for magazines and newspapers?
Ooh, gave it to me. I was going to ask you to repeat the question. I thought Jess was going to take it. What's the future of printable media? I think what we're seeing at the moment is people saying, "What? There's no newspapers. This might be not any newspapers anymore." And we were talking about it last night that people have been reading the news online for years, and it's a giving over to what you've already kind of given over to, I think. And printable media, print as a media, as a book and things like that, it's going to take a long time to get that tactile kind of, you know, a book is a lot less, is a lot more robust than a phone. You can just throw a book in there and you can do whatever you like with it. I think print, and you can know how far through a book you are just by feeling naturally how far the books are.
Well, the thing is too that I sort of see print as a function, but the actual medium as being the text. And I guess it's like a movement in a way of moving away from scrolls to books that are bound, and then the movement from books that are bound into a tablet type interface, and then I don't know what's going to come, but it's kind of like, imagine if cars start to be able to fly, and people saying, "Oh, I miss the cars being on the road." It's still a method of transport, but it's changed in some vital way. I'm not sure. I see print as a word as being a function, but not the actual medium. But I guess that's my personal sort of feeling, because I don't have that much of an attachment to the physical paper printed object.
What do you feel about printed media?
I just thought there isn't any future for newspapers and magazines, and the question was more about what new technologies are there to enable the reader to experience more, like a cleaned application, for example, and you have web documentaries. Do you think that's the future the media will go into? Instead of just scrolling your text, you can watch a web documentary on your iPad.
Well, I was reading an ebook last night, and I accidentally enabled Google Books to start reading to me. I don't know how I did it, but it started talking, and I just sat there listening for a little while, and I thought, actually, this is pretty amazing. I didn't think I'd like it, but it was actually pretty good, and it was something different than being an audiobook on tape or something like that. It was actually reading it to me, and there was something about it. So I don't know. It's hard to speculate, but I guess print as a medium, I see it as dying in this format, but it's going to live on in some format in the future.
And I guess it's, maybe it's also similar to people saying video calls would be great, but video calls is not necessary, you know. It's like people thought video calls was going to be great, but it's not necessarily great. It's just something you do every now and again, but you don't do it. If I wanted to call Jesse later today, I wouldn't video call him, even though I could video call him. So it's kind of that any media will be used how people want to use it, not necessarily because it could be used. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think that's it. Yep. Okay.
Tim, how can people get involved with the Media Lab if they want to kind of do a
Sure.
sprint or find out
Yeah,
more?
we've got a sprint coming up at the Gertrude Street Projection Festival called Anti-Screen, and we're basically going to spend 9 days building things that are, or ways of communicating with light that are projections or screens, and just really holding at the 7th Gallery.
Going through the website.
Yeah, you can go in through the website or through Facebook. There's all the information there. And we've got a massive space down in Collingwood. It's 700 square metres. It's inspiring just to go in there and think, all right, I'll use a computer. What can I use this space for in the work that I do? And we're about to open up an open lab there that people can come in and use the 3D printer and use the CNC machine. All this stuff. We want people to start collaborating. So
In a more ongoing capacity.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, if you ever want to use the space to build a project, give us a call and we'll see what we can do. Because it's huge. It's great. We play cricket in there. It's good.
Thanks very much, Tim and Jesse.